So to go into this a little bit deeper, I'm just going to say a word about attachment theory. And I apologize if you know about attachment theory, you don't need this little lesson. So I'm going to try to make this really brief. But just to say, as human beings, we're wired for attachment. We need attachment. And, babies will bond with their caregiver if their caregiver is appropriately responsive. And then that reflects a sense of self back to them. But attachment trauma takes place when this healthy bonding between caregiver and baby is compromised somehow. So if we're not securely attached, that is a major unmet need. And the unconscious mind is a major needs-getting machine. It's always trying to get our unconscious needs met. So if you have attachment trauma, as I think, most of the population does, it's super, super common, you will try to get this need met in whatever way that you can, including giving up your true self. And, that's why on the deepest level, this is a common strategy. So I want to get into sort of the spectrum of people pleasing, giving up our boundaries, and fawning, because these kind of things are all connected. On some level, they're all the same, and they're kind of a spectrum, because they all involve poor boundaries and essentially when attunement with other is greater than attunement with self. And fawning is now classified as a trauma response, like one of the 4 Fs, being fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And fawning is when, you completely give up self to it's all about the other person. A little bit lesser might be people pleasing, where, and I think that, for instance, like women within a patriarchal culture, that's just built into socialization. And that was around safety, just to keep us safe, like very, very practical reason. So that's why, probably most of us, all of us have some degree of people pleasing. So again, just to restate this thing, that giving up the sense of self, or the reason that we caretake self before others, is not about altruism or saintliness, but about trying to get these unconscious needs met for safety and to secure love. And that, my friends, is the shadow aspect of empathy. And it's not your fault if you have these patterns. It is about wounding. It is about trauma. It's about these very entrenched lineage and cultural issues of patriarchy and all of it. So just know that if you carry these patterns, it's not your fault. And it is our responsibility now to step up, step into our power, and to overcome them. So what is the cost of people pleasing and poor boundaries? Probably more than I've thought of for this talk, but here's what I've thought of. Unsatisfying, unfulfilled relationships, difficulty getting your needs met, self-abandonment, like I was talking about earlier. And the implications of self-abandonment is that you can never achieve your own goals, your own dreams. So self-abandonment is a pattern of immense frustration, because you just know that you have all of this potential in there. You know what your gifts are, but somehow you can't bring them forward. You can't actualize them. Resentment. So if you have resentment in your system, please understand that what resentment is always about is an unmet need. And you projecting that need onto somebody else to fulfill. So this is a really interesting fact. The subconscious mind is always tracking the balance of giving and receiving in relationships. So even if you pride yourself on being giving and altruistic and all those things, the subconscious mind is always keeping track of that. So if you've been in a relationship where there's an unequal balance, that is going to breed resentment. So it's so important to look at where you've suppressed your boundaries, where you've suppressed or overrode your innate sense of no, or where you've expected a need to be met without making it explicit. In those places, that's where resentment is bred. The next question is how to heal, how to learn the healthy boundaries. Like I said, you have to be willing to delve into these unconscious places, right? Look below the surface of your life. A lot of the clients I work with, for instance, have an ideal life, right? They have beautiful lives on the surface, but in order to take this journey, they have to be willing to look below that surface. And it's also like that place that you have been avoiding looking. I know that was certainly really true with me in my marriage. I remember I had a therapist at the time who would always push me, like, let's talk about this, Carla, let's talk about this. And I did not want to look at it. There are these places where we kind of blindside ourselves. And, where we don't want to look. So here's something that's a sort of a red flag for yourself. If you are in fixing mode, like if you're trying to fix your life or fix your relationships, that is a big red flag. If you're in fixing mode, you're generally overlooking parts of your own shadows or demons or core wounds. So in order to do this work, we go into the core wounds. We go into our own unmet needs. We go into our own emotional triggers. And by the way, emotional triggers are something that's always connected to trauma. And how I work with clients is there's so many ways to work with trauma. And luckily there's so much trauma healing now. My dog's trying to jump on my lap. Come on, kiddo. So there's so many beautiful modalities out there for trauma healing. Thank goodness. I really feel like trauma healing is what is bringing our whole civilization to a new level of consciousness. But just to say that, in my work, that's with clients, that's a big place that we work with. There are the emotional triggers leading us back to our trauma, and then we can work with those traumas. And trauma lives in the body in sort of a frozen state. And so when we work with our traumas, we begin to thaw out.